I have -1 friends. Why is that? Well, you used to have no friends and then you made an enemy, just like how Mojang made an enemy of this person and many others by not addressing the end update and instead delivering different flowers and cows, except they have addressed the end update, including this week. Nembon, a Minecraft developer, did an interview with a Polish YouTuber and in it he asked this.
Kiedy w końcu będzie aktualizacja endu?
Kiedy będzie na to właściwa pora? To jest najlepsza odpowiedź.
Czyli nie wyklucza, że się pojawi.
Znaczy nic nie można wykluczać, tylko zawsze jest kwestia zasobów i zawsze jest kwestia priorytetów, tak?
So Mojang aren't ignoring the possibility of an end update, they just think that right now, within the confines of a drop, they'd rather work on ambience and fireflies and other things they think that the game needs, perhaps because they promised them in the past, but then that comes into the question of will they ever have time within a 2 to 4 month drop cycle to get something as big as an end update done? Given that the Never update took a year, and that was while Mojang was on a different form, would they be able to deliver an end update? Well, thankfully, in part 2 of the interview, this question does come up, and Nembon answers it like so.
Będą zarówno malutkie, jak i bardzo duże.
Czyli na przykład możemy dostać drop wielkości hipotetycznie tego słynnego Nether Update?
Możemy dostać drop wielkości nawet Case and Cliffs, tylko że zamiast rozłożonego na 2-3 lata, to po prostu wrzucone jako taka bomba, nie?
Whoa, that is the exact opposite of what I think we all assumed as a community, that if there was going to be another update, the size of the Never update, that it would have to come out as lots of different drops, but he more or less says that no, theoretically within the drop system, we could just throw it out as a big bomb all at the same time, and this kind of alludes to what they mentioned in the Future of Minecraft article, where they hinted that even though the drops were going to be coming out regularly, we would still have some more traditional updates mixed in there. This fundamentally doesn't make sense if you take it at face value, because if every drop cycle has, say, a 3-month development cycle, how are some of those going to be bigger than others? There's only so much you can develop in that time period, right? But there are some ways that Minecraft have kind of hinted that they work around that, and one of those is timing. Obviously, we know the Spring Drop's first release on January the 8th was some of the very first days they were back in the office, so either they slapped it all together in the first few days, or they mostly worked on it the previous year. So timing is a big part of that. If they finish on the Spring Drop very early, that gives them an extra month, but that still doesn't explain how you could get a big update the size of something like before, and I think that you could effectively describe that as delegation. A lot of the Spring Drop seemingly is focusing on visual elements and audio elements and doesn't require that much programming. Think about the new cows and pigs. You need to work out where they're going to spawn, but most of the work is in having the new mobs physically appear, and the same is true for leaf litters and wildflowers. They're just variants of existing things, and people are loving this as an ambience update, but it means that a lot of the behind-the-scenes programming work might be able to work on features for the next drop already, raising the question of will that next drop be the end update that we all desire? Well, if you look at this roadmap, so this is the original leaked roadmap, it has a small chance of being real. We'll have to follow it throughout the year to see if it is accurate, but if you look at this leaked roadmap, which came out shortly afterwards and only details 2025, it came from the Fortnite community, and there's lots of questions we have about this, but it's worth mentioning that they hint that in Minecraft Live this year, they're going to reveal the friend, but capital N, Leaf Fables update, and then in Q3 we're going to get the Soaring Skies update, both of which clearly focus on the end. This would be incredible if true. I just think that the odds of this being, I think it's not impossible, right? But the way that you would know for sure this is right is if there's one brand collaboration in Q1 2025, and also if the update ends up being called the Pigs and Twigs, then I guess there's a small chance the rest of this is accurate, but I would say right now, the way that everyone at Mojang talks about the end update as if it's in their sights, but not in an immediate roadmap. I don't think that you would be so bold as to talk about it dropping all at once if it was definitely coming right away, but instead if it was something that everyone at the studio discusses regularly, and that's why I think that it has come up in the interview, and I think that it's easy to speculate wildly, and hello, I'm ABX Toy Cat, that's what I love to do here, but I also think that you have to keep your speculation grounded in reality, and that's exactly why I'm much more interested in the update that we know is ahead of us, the Spring Drop, and as Susanna Green mentions, contrary to Toy Cat, I feel like this drop is meant for me. I love new ways to decorate my garden and craft environments, and I really like them reworking older biomes on principle. But more blocks, new structures, and mechanical stuff are vital as well. Those should not be forgotten because of aesthetics. And so we have quite a few weeks left in the Spring Drop cycle, somewhere between about 4 and 8, assuming that it is going to be the next Bedrock update, which isn't quite confirmed yet, by the way, but if we have that many number of weeks for them to work on things, it'll be interesting interesting to see which direction they go in. If they do bring out a big new biome or structure, as has been hinted by the brand new starter seeds by the way, but if they bring out a big one of those or even a new type of wood, that kind of is an implication that like, oh yeah, so that's what the technical team are working on. But if we go the entire update and it's just mob refreshes and it's new stuff for the ground, then a part of me would have been a little disappointed before, but now thinking that maybe they're just working on the next drop already, I kind of have a lot more excitement for it. And so that is why I think that I would expect to see a new biome or structure. But if we don't see one, that interestingly might be good news, if you can believe it. By the way, speaking of good news, Mojang looking into improving Bedrock beacons, but they're not improving them and improving the Java ones instead is Mojang parity at its finest. And yeah, I agree, Ninja Noodle. It seems a little bit hypocritical to be like, oh yeah, let's work on parity, except just for Java, because that's not how parity should work. But what I thought was a really interesting question was Gams619 saying how many people need to have beacons to lag a world? Because presumably the reason they can't have beacons render on Bedrock from too far away is because of the additional performance issues it would have. But then, like, what performance issues does a beacon provide? Let's find out. Okay, so here I am on my Xbox One X, I do believe, and I am using my world that I've used to show off previews ever since they added the new stairs and slabs back in like 1.4, and I don't use this world very often, but because of all of the mobs that are here, I get somewhere between 40 to 50 FPS while I'm hanging out in this area. And so now we can see how much that goes down with some beacons, because I am going to use a command, this one right here. Oh, it's very hard on a controller, but this command right... Oh, I've got to scroll all the way to the edge. Yeah, there we go. This command right here to place a ridiculous number of iron blocks. Now I'm going to use the exact same command and I'm going to cover the area in beacons instead. And I don't know what I did wrong there. Oh, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, even though you would expect that a beacon doesn't do very much to your frame rate, if we check that number in the top left, it's gone down from 40 to 50, or very playable, down to about 19.3. And that is in theory because I placed 900 beacons just now, but actually a lot of those beacons aren't active. I've probably placed closer to 500 beacons, and that is far too many. So in theory, as you can see, that still will lag me all the way over here because the beacon beams are all going to render in, but as we get further away and more of the beacons de-render, our frame rate increases. As about a third of the beacons are active, we're at about 40 FPS, and as we get to only a few beacons, call it like 6 to 10, our frame rate is a nice 60. So in other words, your frame rate does dip from beacon beams because something about the way they render into your Minecraft Bedrock world is horribly optimized. You would figure that it could kind of be like how blocks can render in this way, but the way that entities render in Bedrock has lots of issues, so many issues that if they let you have all of your beacons all over your world, you would break some things. And honestly, this is another reminder that entity render distance on Bedrock is terrible, but terrible for a reason. Entities are just not handled very well by the game, and your alternative is playing at 15 FPS or lowering down your render distance to the smaller settings. But keep in mind that even that isn't a good solution, because here I am with my render distance at max, getting 15 FPS. And here's what happens when I turn it down to 5 chunks or Nintendo Switch level. As you can see, the game gets a bit more playable. Actually, quite a bit. We're at 30 FPS now. We've kind of doubled it. It's like a real amount of playing, but still, that is talking about reducing our render distance down from about a third of where it was before, and still not making Minecraft all the way good. Now, the solution to this is just don't have 300 beacon beams, or say, yeah, if there are more than 10 beacon beams within your render distance, it only renders the 10 closest ones or something. But clearly that solution is one that is a lot more technical than just increase the distance, because if you increase the distance, you can break the performance, which is very interesting to see. Look how low my render distance is, but yet how slow my game is performing. It is fascinating how that works. And yet, it is a great demonstration of why simulation distance exists, although Squiddy Go 1DU has a problem with the concept of simulation distance, because they say, has it always been a thing in Minecraft? Because between 2012 and 2014, they played a lot of Minecraft on Java and console, and they could swear that they'd plant something or cook something, go off elsewhere, and come back, and it would be done no matter how far I went. Has it changed now, or is that the Mandela effect? So I want to mention this right now, because Minecraft simulation distance is one of the clever clever tricks they've worked out in recent years, but it does have its downsides, like Squiddy mentions, and it is in fact something that is new. So yeah, on the Java edition, they introduced simulation distance very, very recently, and it goes quite high there. It's a good way to cut things down, and I think that it was actually console edition that introduced it, because instead of it being in 2022 that they introduced it, it was somewhere in the early 2010s. I think that Minecraft console worked out that in order to add all of the new features from all of the updates to platforms like the Xbox 360 and PS3, that they could just cut down the amount of the game that was being simulated, and so I noticed somewhere in the early 2010s that if you left your furnace running and went too far away, it wouldn't actually smelt anymore. I don't know exactly when they did it, or if it was there from the beginning, but it lowered over time, but what's interesting is the Bedrock edition added simulation distance to the game due to it being on the console editions in the Better Together update, and then interestingly, the Java edition seemingly added it because it was on Bedrock, and so that is one of those Minecraft feature ideas that has come from 4J Studios and has now just become ubiquitous everywhere, and I think it actually does have some downsides, but clearly it's a clever enough programming trick that most people don't notice, and most people just enjoy that their game runs a bit better. But I think that having custom simulation distances might be a bit of a cheat that has led to some questionable programming on things like the beacons that have led to them not being very performant. Speaking of not very performant, I want to make a correction. Apparently, leather armor prevents you from freezing when wearing leather boots. This makes no sense to me whatsoever, but if you're wearing leather armor, you just can't freeze. That is not the way the real world works. If I am naked and I run into some snow with just some shoes on, I am not going to avoid death, but I guess technically speaking, I haven't tested that, so I guess I'm going to go out to the mountains now. Actually, I'll do that after this next question, which is an interesting one that comes in from Jack Vite. Actually, is it a question? They're just complaining about the endgame of Minecraft always being building, and no matter what gameplay they add, I feel like I'll always end up being, well, either build stuff or do nothing because there's nothing else to work towards. So I'm actually going to come out here and say that even though this is a compliment towards the ambience update, personally, I actually disagree. I am a big believer that Minecraft always has goals, you're just not necessarily looking for them. This is one of my big goals on this channel, convincing people that the forever survival, as we're now calling long-term survival worlds, but a forever survival world is worth having and is so rewarding, and there's always more things to do, and I've made all sorts of videos on this channel talking about what you can do, but also I now, as of today, am ready to announce something very fun. I have been working on an add-on that is basically there for late game content. A lot of add-ons are basically like, here is a cool stick you can craft in the first 2 minutes, or there's a really overpowered new type of ore that gives you a pickaxe that's 20 times better, but really defeats a lot of the gameplay loop. No, I think that adding to the gameplay loop is the better way to do it, which is why I'm proud to announce that IBX Toy Map's first add-on is ready to be announced now. This is Boss Blitz, and the goal is to add 9 new bosses to Minecraft. They're not there to make the game super OP, instead they're there as challenges for you to one day aim after, and every single boss, when killed, will give you some form of unique drop, but mostly a head, and if you take all of those 9 heads and combine them together, well, let's say something very interesting happens. There was a lot of content in this, and it's been a multi-month process just to get it able to release on the marketplace so that all players, including console players, can have access to it. But what's really interesting about this is we actually had to resubmit it because one of the features in the game was actually going to be coming to Minecraft, so there's something fun for you right there. But what's really interesting is that, yeah, if you want to download Boss Blitz, it'll be available on the 18th of February 2025. I'm so excited to be able to share this after so long. Like, people are asking, like, wait, Toycat, did you say someone works on add-ons for your teams? And I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe, I guess you could say. But it's cool to have an actual release date and an actual, you know, like we've got all the marketing art and everything together. I am so incredibly excited for you to be able to experience bosses in your Minecraft world. Although I will say, even right now in this promo, make sure you do it on a copy because it will obviously disable achievements. That is still a thing that add-ons do, but I think it's going to be a load of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it on my long-term survival world, or rather, a copy of it. Speaking of copies, I have one last question I'd like to go into today, which is from SakiWire2472. I think you're right about Mojang being inconsistent regarding listening to their community, but I think it was smart to remove the mob vote rather than just saying, guess we have to do this because democracy. Because after all, the will of the community was to remove the mob vote, and they listened, which I think is democratic in itself. So this is the most important, dangerous lesson that Minecraft has accidentally taught. I mentioned this in my genuine critique of Minecraft video essay. A lot of people have been enjoying the video essays on the channel recently, thank you. But in that video, I referenced like, yeah, if Mojang is going to claim that their values as a company represent what they're trying to share with their consumers, the most dangerous one that they've said is, yeah, democracy is only good when we're not bored of it. When people get angry at democracy, you cancel it and you go back to an autocracy, and that is the exact opposite of a good message to send to young developing minds. You know, they're willing to teach young people about how parrots shouldn't eat cookies, but they're not willing to teach young people about the virtues of democracy, and even people like Seki Wyatt, with 673 upvotes, get it wrong. It was not the will of the community to end the mob vote, and if you wanted to prove that it was, you would have a vote on whether there should be more mob votes, and if there was one, I guarantee it wouldn't have won. You need to remember that on social media, even here on YouTube, there is a louder and more vocal minority, but just because they're yelling louder, it doesn't mean that more people agree with their opinion. I think that they wouldn't have won a vote about this, and also, the moment after it's happened, there were all sorts of memes talking about how, yeah, it's finally over, it's a historic moment, Minecraft's finally gonna add all free mobs, and it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen at all. You know, Minecraft aren't gonna have any mob vote mobs now. It's not that we go from 1 to 3, it's that we go from 1 to 0, and I think that this is why I think education and democracy is important, and why having that actual democratic discussion is more valuable than just everyone yells and then they kowtow to the popular opinion, because here is the interesting thing. A lot of people use the example of, you know, like, you can't trust people. People like Coldplay and voted for the Nazis. You know, very common thing that people say. And, you know, that is true that they do both of those things. However, if you look at the 1930s German situation, the party of that bad person, you know, the National Socialists, they actually only ever got about a third of the vote at their peak, but they used the proof of them being the largest party, despite not being a majority, to argue that they should remove democracy, and that's basically what they did over a long period of time, and then they did the atrocities. And I'm not saying that atrocities are going to happen in Minecraft, but I'm saying that unless we learn from mistakes and go, oh, let's not do that again, then we are going to be doomed to make them. And that's why I think you should be committed to democracy, not by saying the loudest voice wins, but by saying, yeah, the majority of people's opinions should be listened to. You can have protections for minorities if you want to. I don't know what that possibly means in Minecraft, but you shouldn't have a system where you say, yeah, well, some people got angry, so I'm glad they didn't do it, especially not for something that is meant to be the representation of the community's will. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now and say thank you very much for watching today's Q&A. I am excited for the idea of an end update, and I really do want to see one, but I'm glad that Mojang is taking this approach of like, when the resources are right, when the ideas are right, we'll do it, because they could release an end update anytime they wanted, and they'd get such a huge boost in Minecraft support, but doing the end update right is important. I mean, we saw that from the last end update. They made it, and it's great, but now we need another one, whereas I think the Never is really still wonderful after all these years. I think that another Never update would be nice, but I don't think it's ever going to be the same level of excitement as an end update, and I also think that as soon as they add the end update, we're going to have questions about a fourth dimension. Questions which, by the way, you might get interesting answers from with the Boss Blitz add-on. We did something really fun with an Ancient City portal, and it's my take on what would happen if there was a fourth dimension. I was amazed we were allowed to put it in the add-on, given the rules on not adding content from the main game, but if you want to see what is going to happen inside of the End City, then Boss Blitz will be out on the 18th of February, 2025, and I'm so excited for people to be able to play around with it, and yeah, that is a demonic giant salmon that you'll be able to fight. But yeah, for now, I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.